Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Anchor Watch. I'm your humble host, Bobby Jones, here with executive producer extraordinaire Sam Osterholt. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing okay. Bobby, how are you doing?
I'm, as I journey through life, trying to learn more. You know that old saying: the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Yes.
Well, if that is the case, if that is truly the case, and I think it is, this past week shows that I may have the intellect of a developing 1-year-old because I have learned more about this Iranian United States deal. And I have more questions every time I find out a new detail. And at the end of the day, I need to understand, what was this all for, and how can any rational, logical, even the most remotely educated person can say that this is a better deal than what we had in 2016, 2015 with the JCPOA. More importantly, 13, 14 American lives lost, hundreds wounded, 18 bases bombed, hundreds of billions of dollars now. We'll get into that. And this is a much worse deal. And I'm being told by the President of the United States and anybody else that will listen to him that this is a win. Right there. That is the deal. The United States has lost this war. The MOU that was held secret for the longest time, that has finally been released, Sam, is a glorified instrument of surrender, which non-ironically was signed at Versailles. What are your thoughts?
Can you just talk us through the Versailles piece? I mean, I think, look, here's the thing, because we're going into the 250th year, right? And that's symbolic. There's no difference between the 250th and 254th. It's just a number that seems significant but it's very symbolic, right? And
I literally thought, to be completely honest, that it was a practical joke when I heard someone say this. They were like, "Oh yeah, they signed a treaty at Versailles." I was like, surely someone on the president's close staff, executive staff, the chief of staff, someone with staff after their name that supports the president understands what happened at the Treaty of Versailles. And let me be clear. I love history. I dig into it. The parallels you had in Woodrow Wilson, a man who left the United States for months to personally negotiate this deal, right? To basically carve up an area of the world that the United States had no business really knowing anything about, to include the Middle East. And you had a man who was very arrogant in Woodrow Wilson. All historians will talk about that. A staunch segregationist who segregated Washington, D.C. for the first time officially, basically racist, okay, who had these grandiose ideas that eventually failed. Woodrow Wilson came up with the League of Nations. Donald Trump has come up with the Board of Peace. How did those work out? But most importantly, signed a deal in the same building, right? That was so bad that it led to World War II. So bad. And people knew it then, but they were feeling themselves. Donald Trump signed a deal so bad that here we are, we're going to deal with more conflict. Period. I mean, I just thought it was a practical joke until I actually saw the man signing the documents. And you can't tell me that Macron, the French, president, did not know the delicious irony and was trolling Donald Trump for it. He had to.
Absolutely. Everyone had to. I wonder. So, look, I've been following this war very closely, and I have some personal stakes in the war, and I'm very concerned about Tehran. I don't like the RGC. I don't like the leadership of Iran, right? And I'll tell you, when Obama's deal was signed with Iran, a lot of us really celebrated. because it was
Mm-hmm.
a sort of like, it was this moment of hope, because the West had not been opened up to Iran in any significant way in decades, right? This was this
Yep.
moment where it was like, okay, now this deal, whatever the deal is, we're talking, right? Something's happening here. And then obviously Trump, it was devastating that he ripped that up. So I wonder if you can compare those two deals, and the context around that, because I think diplomacy is so important in this whole context. A deal that is made in good faith, like Obama's, is durable, and a deal that is made under duress, what does that say about this deal and it's not even a deal yet, by the way. We'll get to that in a minute.
Well, I think you bring up some very valid points. First of all, number one, the deliberate process of what President Obama and allies put together. Let's start there. This was not something that was it was not microwave diplomacy. It was done over the course of months and years, right? Number two, it was a joint effort. The United States does not, and President Obama went out of his way not to sit there and say the United States, blah, blah, blah. No, they always referred to it JCPOA because there were multiple nations involved, some of our most critical allies. Okay, that's number two. It wasn't about who got credit. Okay, number three, the diplomatic firepower that was used for those negotiations is the equivalent of the atomic bomb that, you know, we dropped in World War II to a super soaker today. Trump is the super soaker with Witkoff and Kushner and JD Vance. They have no idea what they are doing. None of them have ever negotiated real treaties. None of them. JD Vance was in the Senate. He may have to ratify, but he's never negotiated. They had real diplomats, okay, that were doing this deal, referring to people all over the world, brought in actual scientists, the IAEA, all of these people who knew what the heck they were looking at, weapons proliferation experts across the board. Have you heard of any of them going to Switzerland? No. Have you heard of them being in the room with Pakistan or Qatar? No. And so you wonder why this thing was only 2 pages as an MOU as opposed to 100 and dang near 50 pages for the JCPOA, right? And so just there, the process that I mentioned, you know, the who cares about credit, they don't, and the real subject matter expertise, those three things are a distinct difference than what you have now. And because of this, Iran, and let's be clear, because no regime change happened, just younger people got promoted because of others right. being killed. They still have the institutional knowledge of what a serious negotiation and treaty looks like. They do. And they're looking at these guys now, and they're like, they're clowns. I mean, they walked right past JD Vance, you know, and America was so desperate. We just violated all sorts of diplomatic protocol. I'm glad that people have pointed that out. But when you sit and you look at this same government, the same regime who dealt with Obama in 2015 and 2016, dealing with Trump in 2025 and 2026, they see the difference. Unlike the American public who looks at this as separate, you know, administrations, they do not. And so when they sit there and they go out of their way to include Hezbollah, to include Lebanon and Syria in their negotiation, it is because they have institutional knowledge and it's important to them to do so. And Trump does not care. And Israel definitely does not care. And when you have this combination of ignorance, right? Ignorance plus apathy to what your adversary wants, how in God's name do you expect to have a real long-lasting deal? That's not how diplomacy works. We have eviscerated our soft power, Sam. We killed it.
Yep.
From USAID to as a matter of fact, the World Cup being played in the United States right now is the biggest soft power thing we have going for this country.
I mean, it's totally true. And look, I don't want to talk about how the Iranians are being treated, but
oh my God. And that's why I mentioned it, Sam. That's exactly why I mentioned it. So you're telling me the people you're trying to negotiate the end of a war with, you have the Iranian national team who rarely qualifies for the World Cup, who's here. They got to fly into the United States the day of the game, play their game, and get back on a plane and fly back to Mexico. Yep. Treating them like second and third class humans savagely. But you don't think that matters to the people you're negotiating with? And you wonder why they walked right the hell past the vice president of the United States because they're seeing your hospitality first and foremost? Get out of here.
All of this is just like I don't know. It's just a troll. And I think, look, I think that the Obama deal, you talk about the diplomacy, you talk about the seriousness, you talk about the expertise, you talk about the time and caution and thoughtfulness and all the things. You may have two plans that are identical, but you will not have the faith in the plan that is done by this group, right? Because it is unserious. It is fucking unserious. It is a whole bunch of people who marched in, and you have Pete Hegseth who thinks power comes from pull-ups, right? And you have a president who's wearing pull-ups, and you have I'll trademark that joke. I like that. Anyway, and you have people who are involved in business deals, who see all zero-sum gains, like all of this shit. The public has to get behind a treaty for it to be enforceable. And maybe that's not well, but it's true. It's just culturally true. Nobody buys this deal if these people are involved in it.
And here's what I think is amazing to me, right? It's a bad deal. The people who have backed you relentlessly are telling you it's a bad deal.
Yes.
And now you've pissed off your detractors who already thought you sucked in diplomacy. And now you're your most ardent supporters at the same time. And the only people that think that you've made a good deal are the guys that you're in conflict with.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The Iranians have been able to walk this fine line balance of being pissed off and letting people know it, while also still accepting the fruits of their resistance. Because let's be clear, the United States is not used to a country standing up in front of them and be like, that's all you got? That's all you got. And here we go. We're going to do this. Not used to it.
Look,
we're used to bluffing our way out of things under the Trump mindset.
Yeah. So I think a few things about this deal that I want to kind of get into the weeds on a little bit. The first is that you're absolutely right. There was some reporting that as they're trying to negotiate in Switzerland, Trump is truthing some bullshit, and the Iranians were like, he's got to apologize.
Yep. Yes.
Our media, the woman who he called a piggy, or the reporter who he made, all of these people should have been doing this the whole time, but the Iranians were the first to say, no. We're not going to talk to you until you apologize.
Right.
So the second thing is, and I really have been dying to get your take on this. This is really a war between three parties, right? The United States, Israel, and Iran.
Right.
Right. And Israel and the United States are allies, the aggressors in this case, right?
Yes.
And if you and I are fighting, God forbid, that would be a terrible thing for me. And your friend is also fighting me. And I said, hey, look, let's stop fighting. But the first thing that you have to do is get your friend to break up with his girlfriend. And you say, sure, no problem. I've just created a wedge. Oh, there's my thumb. I've just created a wedge in you and your friend, right? Is this, it feels like Iran is strategically dividing the United States and Israel, and it's working. Every day it is working more and more and more. Where does this go?
It is deliberate. It has been deliberate from the first time they stated what their requirements were to end the conflict. It's been that way, but I'll take it a step further. They have gone out of their way to hold Israel accountable for their actions. That is what's happening here, because twofold. The second Israel does something wrong, the United States is held responsible. That is new, because they understand that Israel cannot do what they're doing without United States support. Number two, they have directly struck in the borders of Israel. They have hit targets, they have the range, they have the capability, and it is stressing Israel's air defenses. Israel is not used to being directly attacked for such a sustained period of time, because usually what will happen is the United States and their allies will stand up for Israel and things get ratcheted down. Well, when you have a problem with both the United States and Israel and you're getting bombed every day, you adopt the mentality of I have nothing to lose. And this is where the IRG, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, comes in. They are the fanatics. They're the ones who's like, whatever the cost. They don't care about the diplomacy aspect of this. They understand that their land, their sacred land, is being attacked, and they are acting accordingly. So what you have is, because of the lack and desire, be very clear, the desire to have serious negotiations, because Israel themselves does not want a peace that's strong and lasting between the United States and Iran. They don't. Because it is the biggest strategic failure if the United States does not keep the pedal to the metal for Iran and checks Iran on Israel's behalf. That's fact. Never mind the fact that Israel has worked out of its way to try to make alliances with the other Arab nations. Iran's not Arab. People need to remember and understand that. People just throw them on and say it's not the same. And so Iran realizes, if we can check Israel or check the United States, their symbiotic relationship in the region falls apart, and they're doing it effectively. So when peace is supposed to be happening with the United States, Israel strikes. Okay. When Israel seems to act like they're having they're calming down because the United States says something, then Iran demands this, that, and the other. And Israel says that's not okay. It's a vicious self-licking ice cream cone that's happening. And without professional diplomacy in place to mediate, the real estate mogul and the son-in-law, they don't understand the dynamics of what's happening here, because this is not about dollars and cents. This is about ideas, principles, religion, and history.
Yeah.
And that's why they're way out of their depth.
I want to play a video, and you tell me assess the factuality of the statements made.
We took in more oil yesterday than has ever gone through the Strait. You probably see that we have an oil gusher. The Strait is totally open. You know that, and we're negotiating. We'll see how that all goes. But we have two things: we have an open Strait, and we have a country that will never have a nuclear weapon. Will never ever have a nuclear weapon.
My favorite part of that is he's pretending to read something in that notebook.
Yeah, and that notebook looked like it was like just a clear piece of plastic.
No, it looks like the notebooks that I used to keep my baseball cards in.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, like preservation sleeves.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the statement. If you want to see if he's telling the truth, you can go to the UK's maritime traffic website, UK MTO website, and you can see what's currently in the Persian Gulf based on who's there and transmitting the AIS signal, which is an identification code. And you can see the congestion is still there, right? So it's not hard to disprove this guy. He's wrong. Then when he says an open strait and a country without a nuclear weapon, okay, we had that in 2015 and 2016. Without the loss, without the billions, without the bases being bombed, etc. What are we doing? And then finally, the other thing that I would say to that is he wants credit for fixing a situation that he caused, right? And in causing it, though, he has completely destroyed whatever credibility he has. And what bothers me the most is that credibility is not checked by the media. The media is sitting there knowing he's lying. I watched Jon Stewart talk to Maggie Haberman and Jonathan, what's his face, that just came out with their little book about all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. And I'm like, and I'm listening to Maggie Haberman, and no knock to her, she's a great journalist, but I said this during the first term that Trump served. She has sacrificed journalistic integrity for access.
Right.
And a lot of these people are doing that. Caitlin Collins seems to be the most pushbacky and Kirsten Welker. But the media allows this man to keep making these statements, and it makes the situation worse. It shows that we have no international, you can't trust anything that comes out the leader of the United States' mouth because of it. And because the media won't check them, it seems like we're creating another reality. But Iran, the UK, the Gulf state nations, all of them are operating under the reality of what's going on. They know different. And so he looks like a bigger fool because we, the fourth estate, the one that's protected by an amendment, is not checking him. Like, no, Mr. President, that's wrong. Or showing him the evidence contrary thereof.
Or at minimum, not writing a headline that just says, Trump says the
Yes.
Strait of Hormuz is open.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like the headline is just reflecting a lie. You're just printing a lie in the headline by the liar.
Right.
You're citing the liar. That's the only good thing about it. That's it.
I agree. And the last thing I'll say about watching that clip, right? All those people standing behind him, history is going to be like, they were the ones that allowed this. They were the ones that didn't check it. I watched a YouTube video or a YouTube clip of a reporter in Iowa, of all places, that quit his job because of the integrity. But those guys standing back there behind him, right? They're all just sitting there. And he looks at them and they are yes men. The emperor has no clothes mentality. The only difference is this is costing Americans daily. It's cost some the ultimate sacrifice that wore the uniform, but it's costing every last one of us something daily, when there are people who are really struggling to make ends meet right now because of what he did. And he's already told you he doesn't care. So where's the solution? Where's the check to it?
It's mind-boggling. So I want to talk about another thing, but I just want to get your take. What happens? Look, we've got the 4th of July coming up. What are we looking at with Iran? I mean, you said it in the beginning that the more you know, the more you know you don't know, right? About this war, about the negotiations, about the deal, the MOU. What are we looking at over the 4th? What are we looking at through July? What about oil prices? What about the Strait? What does Iran have? What are they looking at?
We need to be very careful. And when I say we, the United States, and how we go about business the next couple of weeks, if there's no move to better feelings or good feelings or more permissible feelings towards negotiation, Iran's the type of country that will strike us on July 4th for symbology, solely for symbology, right? That's the type of thing. And because we're talking about a nation when the revolution happened in 79, how they held hostages until the minute after Ronald Reagan was sworn in to release them so Jimmy Carter wouldn't get credit. Okay, we're talking about that level of diplomatic pettiness. So you've got to be careful. Do I want that to happen? No, but would it shock me if it did? Absolutely not. For the United States of America to be caught up in this vicious, almost no-win scenario right in time for the 250th anniversary of our nation should make everybody pause, because those founding fathers, when they did this whole experiment, they just wanted to be free of tyranny. They felt like they were being picked on. They felt like they were being singled out. They felt like they were being oppressed. And in 250 years, We have lived long enough to go from hero to villain, because in this scenario, as bad as Iran's history has been, right, almost all of it has been at the hands of the United States going back to 1953.
Yeah.
See, and people don't want to remember this. They don't want to talk about this. Iran was a democracy. They elected what we believe was the wrong person, and we organized a coup. And then the Shah took over. And now at the 250th anniversary of our existence, we are the ones sitting there bombing schools, blowing up things, and then having the nerve and audacity to act like we are in the right when we're not.
So, man, look, you said it earlier that, this is the first president to essentially ever sign a document of surrender to a foreign enemy in our 250th year, which is just a gut punch. But I wonder, what does this do to the men and women who are serving right now and who are stationed over there, who are on ships, outside the Strait, who know people who've sacrificed everything, who are stationed at those bases that are destroyed, like you were. Yeah. What is this? What it must hit different than it does for a guy like me.
I mean, I can speak for myself and a couple of people I've talked to. You question why. You question the why. And what I mean is, no matter how hard a situation can become, the American military is the most resilient force in the world. We will go through hell if we know that it's protecting our country, if we know the reason why. And here's the thing, through Republican presidents, Democrat presidents, heck, I go all the way back to the founding of Federalists, Whigs, whatever. No one ever questioned if the commander-in-chief honestly believed that these moves were the best for the United States. May have had different ways to go about it, may have had different people, but you never questioned. The methodology would be different based on the person. For the first time, I know that I get text, emails sent in who are basically saying, we're just doing this for Trump's beachfront property, or we're doing this because they want to make deals here. They want to make more money here. I've never heard that kind of language before, where people are directly saying that the action that the military is taking is making and enriching the commander-in-chief. That is new. That is new. And heaven help you if you ask them to go through and do extraordinary things like the Gerald R. Ford had to on their 320-something day deployment. And you sit and you look up and you're like, why? And then you see that MOU that's being signed and you're like, what just happened? We just gave them everything they wanted in their little 14-point deal. So you feel like the sacrifice was unworthy of what you thought was happening. You deploy, especially in the Navy, you deploy so you don't have to have Americans suffer at home. Number one reason the naval service goes out. So we don't have to fight battles and wars in the United States. We do it overseas. So you as the American citizen doesn't have to suffer. But when you're getting emails on deployment from your family talking about gas is $4, $5, or $6, $7 in California, when you're getting emails from your family that are telling you it's hard to go buy groceries, that, hey, we're going to have to use WIC or whatever other supplements to make ends meet because you're an E3 with a wife and a child. When you hear these things and you can't do a goddamn thing about it because you're thousands of miles away, sweating in 120-degree heat, dealing with drones coming at you, sitting there dealing with, unidentified craft coming at you, and you sit there and you hear that the president doesn't care about inflation. The president's like, hey, some people may die. That's just the way it is. When he's talking about you as a military member, it hits different. It hits different. And you expect people, and they expect you to be happy to see them when you pull in. And the first thing you see is Hegseth sitting on the pier after being gone for 320 days, sleeping on the floor, can't take a crap in your own ship. And your berthing where you live and, for years is bombed out and depleted. Get out of here. I'm just giving you the reality. There are going to be some bitter cats for it, and you're going to sit there and say, why do we even listen to this person?
So, look, let's say tonight, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, Trump sits his fat ass down and signs an agreement. War is over. What happens tomorrow?
So the thing he'll care about most is the market and this and the other. The thing that I think will happen is the Gulf states will tell the United States, we don't want you here. That's what happens tomorrow. I think we will lose the strategic advantage of having forward deployed bases because we just saw that they were ineffective and made those countries targets. I think that the world will sit and look at the United States and see, even if they think the price is going to go down, there's still a new floor for the cost. The world will look around and now have to deal with Iran as a diplomatic equal instead of an also ran or some quote rogue state. Nope, they're full-fledged national power now because of your actions, and there will be ripple effects to it. Because of that, China strategically, in my humble opinion, and people can get mad and say this, accelerates their role to being the singular superpower in the world. It is because, people, there are some that will say that they're that now. I'm not that far gone, but this accelerates it because Iran and China's relationship is very tight. It gives them access to now more oil, and they already have the minerals that we need. By the way, it will take us, you talk about what happens the next day. The reason that they're asking for $80 billion from the Secretary of Defense is because we have to restock all that ammunition that we just burned up, and we can't. And Trump is having a meeting Wednesday with defense contractors asking, why is it taking so long to build these weapons? Well, because they're complex. And because the American industrial military complex has allowed ridiculous exorbitant prices to be charged for these things. The perfect storm is here. So because of our own hubris, the same thing that Dwight Eisenhower warned us about before he left office in 1961, it's happening. It's happening. So our degradation is happening because of decisions that we made by selecting the wrong leadership, staying in the military industrial complex, underestimating adversaries and frenemies around the world, to the point now where the bill is coming due and we don't know what to do. I wish I could be more optimistic, but the tea leaves are there. I mean, and I don't think I'm saying anything wrong.
No, I don't think so either. But I'd never heard it that eloquently, and I think you're totally right. That's the day after the war is the day that the New World Order starts chugging along without us. I want to quick because we got to wrap here shortly, but I can't let you go without talking about.
Oh man.
I knew I was going to get you,
man.
I showed you this one in the green room. The same reaction. You were like, oh, okay. So who is he and why is he so annoying?
So
we talked about him last week a little bit. I think, and maybe even the week before. But
real estate, in charge of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The man has made a ton of money building homes. He cut big checks to Trump. Let me be very, 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 very direct. You cannot have a director of national intelligence that does not know a damn thing about intelligence. You cannot have a DNI that can't even get a security clearance. You cannot get a DNI, and the first thing that they do with the lack of experience I just mentioned is go in and fire people. The whole reason that role was created was because in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks 26 years ago, we realized that we have all these intelligence agencies that don't talk and more or less do not coordinate. And because of that, we could not put the TVs together and 5,000 Americans died in hours. Okay. Now we have gone so full circle with the guy who does not care about national security because His background is so intertwined with those that would be considered suspect. Let's remember how hard it was for members of the Trump family to get their security clearances. I'm specifically talking about Jared and Ivanka.
Yep.
Okay. When they were senior advisors to President Trump in the first term. There's a reason, because these triggers matter. These triggers matter. There have been rumors for years that one of the reasons why Israel has been so supported by the Trump administration is because that he's been compromised by their intelligence. Do we know that? I don't know. I do know this. The fact that we can even remotely have that conjecture is a problem. So now you want to take a guy who has no experience after firing someone who you turned on the American citizens by raiding, my hometown for ballots. Okay. And now we found out that she apparently is part of a cult and took her cues from a cult. You want to replace her, as bad as she was, with a guy who is completely terrible, who's even admitted, there are things I'm going to have to learn. This is not on the job training. That's not that type of job, man. It's not that type of job. You need careerists that know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, well, and here's the other thing. He swept in and he's firing everyone who could help him do what he's got to do. And even though many of the people who walked out are Gabbard hires. Yes. But here's the thing. This is one of those situations where you don't just fire people when you come in, because there's this whole thing called continuity, and having institutional memory matters in something that happens in real time very fast. Intelligence reports come in quickly. They have to be processed quickly. They have to be analyzed quickly, because it can directly affect what's happening to agents, military, politicians, whatever down the road, right? You have to have a set process. You just don't flip over the apple cart just because you can, right? I'll give you a perfect example. When World War II happened, Pearl Harbor, Chester Nimitz got out there. The Pacific Fleet is basically at the bottom of near Ford Island and Pearl Harbor, and he didn't fire one soul, even though it was the biggest intelligence failure in American history at that point. He told them, I need you to win the war, so pull your heads out your ass. We got to figure this out. And because he made that strategic decision not to fire anybody, they were able to decipher the code, the Japanese code, and was able to cut them off at midway. World War II is not won without that single decision to maintain the people that were there. Fast forward to now, 80 plus years later, and we're having someone just blow up everything, even despite the lessons of Pearl Harbor and despite the lessons of 9/11. We have an administration that is not serious. They don't know history. They don't understand what they're seeing now, and therefore they're ruining the future. It is that simple to me. It's that simple to me. I'm not trying to be negative Nancy. I love my country. I'm willing to die for it, was willing to die for it. And to see this happen so quickly in such real time with people who are not even remotely qualified to be in the room, the only thing is they cut a check, is the absolute thing that these clowns have been saying has happened before. Well, these people got put there because they're black, or they got there because they're a woman. No, they fought to get there. You're putting people in place because they cut you a donation, a check, or doing a business deal with you. And how are we doing with all of this? How's it going? Look, so the least qualified for his job, Bill Pulte or Hegseth? I'm going to stump you.
You know what? I'm going to surprise you. I'm sticking with Hegseth, because here's the deal. I'm going to say why. Because with Pulte, we don't know, because he's never done anything. So who knows? He could be an intel genius when trained properly. We've seen Hegseth in the military, and they booted his ass out because he sucked. A DUI drinking, non-promotable, non-command having clown.
Amazing. I agree. I
mean, seriously. And now the GOP senators want his head. The fact that he has the nerve and audacity to ask for an additional $80 billion this week, they're like, time out, we're done with this. And I have a very sneaking suspicion that if he does last the midterms, he better, what was it, Pods, the movie company where you can just put your stuff out there and just have it on hot standby. He might want to get them in front of the Pentagon, because I'm telling you right now, they're going to move his ass out of there after midterms. This is the one thing that I think the GOP Senate in particular and members in the House and the GOP would not be against, especially when you have people like Driscoll, who's the Secretary of the Army, who's Vance's guy, who, to be completely honest, is way more competent than Hegseth, is sitting there waiting in the wings. I think they're going to cut their losses quickly with this because of all the negative publicity he's generated, from personnel matters and striking names off of Admiral and General's list to sitting there quoting Pulp Fiction while getting your ass handed to you. And let's not forget about Signalgate within the first few months he was in the position. There is nothing positive that has happened with the United States military since he has been put in charge. Full stop. And this is a bipartisan issue. I've seen it come from both sides. I think his days are numbered, to be completely honest with you.
You know what else? He has been during his whole tenure, he gets up and he gives these speeches. He says, we don't listen to the haters. Lethality. From strength, war fighters. He does all the hits.
Buzzwords.
I haven't seen him in a while. I mean, I know he's given a couple of appearances, but he hasn't been out front and center. And I think they're pulling him back because he's an idiot.
The last time we saw
every time he shows up and he's like, we are winning this war. And everyone is like
the last time we saw him,
this war,
we saw him on the beaches of Normandy.
Oh God.
Telling European countries that their immigration policies are jacked up, and basically all of the dead that died there was in vain because they're being invaded again. There's no way that if I'm a Secretary of Defense of any NATO country, do I talk to him directly again?
No.
There's no way. I'll talk to the Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of the Navy, the Air Force, but I'm not dealing with him. To say that on sacred soil, to take that time to be overtly political, the nationalism, the white Christian nationalism thing that he is about, when if you go and look at the limestones at that cemetery near Normandy, you'll see various shapes of various religions, various shapes. You'll see the freaking Jewish star, you'll see the Muslim crescent, you'll see the American, you will see them all. And for him to say that, for him to strike the names of people who look like me, who, by the way, the D-Day invasion doesn't happen without us because the colored folks there had huge balloons attached to them. So the Germans wouldn't freaking wipe out the people landing on the beach at great risk to them because they couldn't move. And even if they could move, if the balloon is struck, it blows up. For him to say those things on that sacred soil, he should have been fired then, if not ever. But I'm telling you, his days are numbered because you can only take so much of this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Bobby, next week I want to ask you about your heroes. I want to hear more about I'm feeling a lot of feelings about this 250th, and it's so depressing because it should really be a time where we reflect on what is so good about the United States and what we can do better and where we ought to be. And you have such a wealth of historic knowledge, and particularly from the military side. And I want you to start introducing us to the people who made the difference in your life.
I have a very interesting list that I'm excited to share with people. Some names you know, but you may not know the full story. A lot of them you will have never heard of. And I'm telling you now, they call it the complete spectrum of the rainbow, men, women, different religions, because that's what America is. And there are people that I've gotten to know about in my time, especially in the military, that became unbelievable motivators to me. Yeah. Not because they did the cool stuff that's movie worthy, but because they endured and was like, this ain't about me, it's about everybody else. And I can't wait to start talking about those people.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it next week. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. And if you stick around next week, you'll get to hear about some of Bobby's heroes and some real American heroes. You guys, you got to subscribe to Bobby's Substack every day. Every day. I love it. The like calmness that you have early in the morning, Bobby, for your daily memos. You know, you're like, here's what you need to know today.
Yeah, the coffee hadn't kicked in by that point.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why.
It's wonderful, but it's so calm. By the time I get you at night, you're like, what are they doing?
Yeah. Gotta get better about that. But
yeah. Everyone, like and subscribe to Lincoln Square as well. We can't do any of this stuff without you. And we will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.